Okay, thank you everybody for being here, and you are welcome to ask whatever questions you have. Please don't be afraid to interrupt me. My name is Rachel. I go by Ren, R-E-N. And I like to treat all of these sessions really pretty casually. My goal here is to provide you all as much information as I can. But also to take whatever questions you have and make sure that you're getting your answers. I come from kind of a community-based grant writing approach, participatory grant writing, transparent, anti-racist pedagogies. I was a professor for a long time at Northern Kentucky University. And so I'm really excited to be at CultureWorks. I'm in my 6th month here now. And I'm loving this position because I'm able to pull in my grant writing skills alongside, kind of my pedagogy from when I was a professor. And that really is about just making sure you all have all the support you need. As far as I'm concerned, I'm here to serve you. This is a community grant. The community members actually decide, who receives this grant and how much. I am just here to administer it and make sure that you all have your needs met as we go through. So the first thing that I want to do is just share the website for CultureWorks, and let me set that up here real quick. Let's see here, Rachel. And I'll just talk you through the website first before we get into any kind of formal PowerPoint. Okay. So what you're looking at here is the CultureWorks website. You just want to click on Apply for Funding, and you'll see the Artist Opportunity Grant at the top. And you'll see pretty much the introductory information about this grant. This year we have $75,000, which is about $15,000 more than we had last cycle. And grants will range from $500 to $5,000. I highly recommend reading the guidelines here. Much of the information that I go through with you today is actually coming from the guidelines, and in the guidelines you'll see a lot more detail because we're not going to be able to touch on everything necessarily in our hour here today. And you can access a PDF of the application here. One thing that I will tell everyone just upfront about Community Force is that that portal does have a tendency to time out on people. This is not fun for grant writers anywhere. I know from experience, because a lot of times what will happen is you can lose text that you have already input into the portal. So it is always recommended to actually draft or write outside of the portal and then copy and paste. So what you have here really is just a PDF of a copy and paste straight out of the portal. It's going to show you exactly what the questions are. It'll tell you the word limit or the character limit. And you'll be able to really see what it's going to look like when you go in there. Okay. So wanted to make that apparent to everyone. And stop share here. And go back in. Okay. So what I'm going to do next is just share actually a PowerPoint that I have. This is a similar PowerPoint to what Karen Maynor, my predecessor, presented last year. I've made a few changes to it, a few updates. Again, please feel free to interrupt me at any point. I want to make sure that your needs are met, and you can interrupt me via the chat, or you can just give me a shout out. I'm fine either way. Okay, so let me get us into the actual PowerPoint. Let me just a minute here. And we'll get a little more formal. Okay. So one of the most important things to know about this grant is that CultureWorks administers the grant. In other words, we oversee the process through which you are applying and reporting. We oversee the process of the review of panelists as they score the grant applications once you've met the deadline. We do all of that work. However, the funds for this grant come from Montgomery County. We have the rare opportunity of living in a county that actually does provide support, not just to arts organizations, but artists, individuals, as well as creative entrepreneurs, as we like to call them here. So this is a unit of government, the Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District, that is set up much like a school district, but with the unique purpose to support, nurture, and encourage the development and preservation of arts and culture throughout Montgomery County. If you feel that your project is an art, is a craft, is a creative piece of work, you are eligible to apply for this grant. You really just need to be able to make the argument that what you are working on will deepen the cultural and artistic range within our region. So for the 24-25 Artist Opportunity Grant, we have $75,000 available. As I said, that's about $15,000 more than last year. And the grant ranges from $500 to $5,000. You need to specify really within that range how much you are asking for this particular grant. And we'll see that in more detail when we actually take a look at the application. To be eligible, you have to be a Montgomery County resident. You need to be a US citizen or a permanent legal resident. You need to be at least 18 years old. You cannot be asking for funds as a student. That's important. You may ask for funds as an artist. So what this means is if you are taking classes in an art, or you're an art major or graduate student, we cannot provide you funds for work that you are completing for a course. You can, however, apply for grant funds for a project that you are working on outside of school, but it cannot be toward any degree or certification. Okay. So it's an independent project that you're completing on your own. So I want to talk a little bit just about what we mean by the word opportunity. First, that the opportunity is unique. It's not something that you have done before. And it's imminent. In other words, it's something that needs to take place within the next year. The grant funds, while the application takes place in 2024, the funds are available to you for the year of 2025. So you have basically that full year to complete your project. You may not use the funds outside of January 1st to December 31st of 2025. So the project has to reach completion by that end date. Another way to think of an opportunity is that it leads to your professional growth, and I would actually say your the depth of your craft, the knowledge of your craft. I think we use the word professional kind of loosely here, considering that you can be 18 or older. You may be working as a professional and actually have a lot of shows under your belt, but maybe you do not, and that is okay. We have different levels that we consider as far as where you are at in your career. And so please keep an open mind about what we mean by that. What we really mean by professional is that you are pursuing your craft, you're pursuing your work on your own time, in addition to any other job or schooling you may be participating in. And so you're working as a professional in that sense. Some examples of opportunities that people have participated in the past is a workshop or a residency, creating brand new work, or auditioning for a dance or theater company. Maybe you have to travel to do that, those kinds of things. Okay. Any questions out there? Are you okay?
I do have a question, actually.
Sure, go.
So, my idea for
Mm-hmm.
this would be creating a body of work that would be exhibited in a space, a gallery space.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have several works that I've already created that would go great in the show, but I'm a bit confused on if that's able to be included since it was not created. Not all of them were created as of next year.
That's a good question. Yeah, so you are allowed to continue to work on a larger project or series,
Okay.
but the grant funds can only go toward the new work. Does
Understood.
does that make sense? So
Yeah.
certainly, like the exhibit can include work that you've already completed, but you can't necessarily use the grant funds toward those works, toward
Mhm.
the development of those
Yeah.
works, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it
Good?
does.
Okay,
Yeah. Thank
awesome,
you.
awesome. No worries, no worries. Thanks for asking your question. I'm glad you did. And I just sounded like somebody else came in. So let me admit Barb. Hi, Barb, welcome. We'll go back to, we're gonna pick up where we left off. And Barb, just so you know, we're recording right now. Just wanted to let you know that. And I am welcoming questions. So as I go through this presentation, so you're welcome to shout out, Barb, whenever you have a question, and I'll just stop the share. We'll answer your question and then I'll continue at that point. Okay. So the next question I want to address is just how can you use the funding? So creating new works only, and that goes to the most recent question, right? About what if you're working on a series of artworks, just make sure the funds are focused on the newest work. And for your time, you can get up to 20% of the funding request, okay? You can use the funds for the presentation and marketing of your work. You can use the funds for professional services. Okay. You can use the funds for materials and supplies as long as those materials and supplies are in direct relation to the project. You can use the funds for equipment and facility rental. For any equipment purchases, has to be less than $500. And you can also use the funding for fees and travel. So for example, if what you're interested in is not necessarily the creation of a new work, but you're interested in a professionalization opportunity or to attend a workshop or a seminar of some sort, this grant can also be used to fund that. So what can you not spend the grant money on? This may be the more useful question to know. You cannot use it on ongoing work or supplies for general use. It has to be new work. Okay. You cannot use it for living expenses or ongoing studio rental. You cannot use it to purchase equipment that costs more than $500. There is that strict limit on that. The activities that have already taken place or take place outside of the grant period, cannot use it for that. Commercial work, or if somebody's commissioned work from you, can't use the grant money for that. The idea there, of course, is that you're already being paid for that work, and this grant is really meant to encourage new work and opportunities for you. Curatorial projects, so projects where you're not necessarily the main artist, others are, and you're working more as a curator at that point. That is not eligible for this grant. Montgomery County actually has a really strict policy about not using their grant funds for food and beverages. So for example, if you're using the funds to help create an exhibit or a performance, that is fine. But if you're having any kind of reception before or after the exhibit, you cannot use these funds to support for food and beverages for that activity. You can also not use the funds for fundraising events, and that seems kind of redundant that you would. You've raised some funds here. We're asking you to spend those funds on your own work, on your own art. Okay. Any questions about what's eligible and what's not eligible right now? Does everybody feel good with that much?
Real quick, Rachel, I don't believe
Yeah.
we can see your PowerPoint anymore.
Ah, okay. I need to share. All right, hang on. My apologies. That's one of those moments, you all, where you shout out. But of
Sorry, I
course,
sent
you
a message in
no.
there.
I see the
Yeah.
message now, and I just missed it. You can see that I am rather informal with people. I'm like, we all are just getting
Here
to
we
know
go.
each other here. Okay, there we go. So
Thank
let me
you.
go back. No, you're fine. You're fine. And I'm going to post these slides on the website too, so you all will be able to access it there.
Okay.
So how can you use the funding? And how can you not use the funding? All right. And apologies for that. Okay. So here is the timeline, and I am actually excited kind of about what's coming. So October 20th is the application deadline. In late November, we'll have a grant panel meeting. The exact date is to be determined. What will happen at this point basically is similar to all of our other grants. There will be a public panel through Zoom where the panelists will convene and talk about what they've thought about the applications. So they will have had about a month with the applications at this point. And what they will be doing is actually looking at a split screen, basically, where they have your application and they have the assessment rubric on the other side. And they're going through as they read, and they're taking notes, and they're scoring each section of the grant. All right. This meeting is meant to be a continuation of that review process. It is not meant to be, here come the panelists, they're going to tell you exactly how you did. What this is the first time that the panelists come back together after they have completed their individual reviews, and they are comparing notes during this public panel. After this discussion, where they'll spend about 10 to 15 minutes on each of the applications, they will have the opportunity to actually update their scores, okay? And they may choose to update their scores because somebody interpreted a section of the grant differently and they realize, oh, I may have misread that. Okay, or it may be, oh, there was a piece of evidence that they had uploaded that answers a question I had. I didn't notice that at first. So I'm going to update my score. Brianna, I see your hand is up. Do you want to ask a question about this process?
No, I'm sorry. That was up from the PowerPoint.
Okay, okay, you're good. You're good. All right, let me go back into share. I really like the public panel. I think it can be really helpful, especially because some of the panelists are artists, some of them are administrators. I'm also doing some work where I'm trying to bring in more community members who may or may not be artists, but who are from Montgomery County and are invested in frequenting, art exhibits or performances and that kind of thing. Because really, this is a community grant. It's meant to serve the public. It's their tax dollars as much as it is meant to serve the artists themselves. Okay. Okay, so after that virtual grant panel meeting, as I said, the panelists will have the opportunity to finalize their scores. And then at that point, you will receive notification from me about how much you have received for the grant, or if the panel decided that this was not an application that they were comfortable funding at this time. You'll receive that notice as well if that's what happens. Sometimes it just comes down to the fact that we receive more applications than we have funds for. And the panelists really have to go through kind of a difficult deliberation in those situations about how they're going to make decisions about how to assign the funds. So if anybody has any questions about that process, I'm happy to answer them for you as we move forward. The panelists do go through an orientation. They do receive training. As I said, you'll be able to witness that panel meeting and then receive the email from me letting you know how much you receive or not. In December, the grantees meet with me and we will discuss your grant agreement. Once we have a grant agreement, which is almost like a contract, a revisable contract, in January of 2025, we will begin distributing the funds to the grantees. You will receive one lump sum 30 days prior to the start date for your project, and then you have that full year to complete it. Final report is due 30 days after the project is ended. Okay. So that is our basic timeline. So I have a question for you two, if I may ask. For the scoring criteria, the panelists are looking at artistic merit, the potential impact that the opportunity can have on your development as an artist, your professionalization, the depth of your craft. They're looking at the quality of the proposed project. When they're looking at administrative capability, they're really looking at whether or not they feel confident in your ability to complete the project based on how you're describing it in the application. And then they're also considering the public benefit of your project. In other words, how does your project communicate with the public? Do you have a particular audience in mind? What are the needs of that particular audience? And how does your project fulfill or meet those needs? Okay. I kind of want to pause here because I think of this really as a conversation between you and kind of Montgomery County and me and the audience. And I'd like to just kind of pause here about the criteria and see if you all have any questions about it. And any response to some of the vocabulary that you're reading in those criteria? Barb or Brianna? This isn't a test question, by the way. I'm genuinely curious about what you think.
Oh.
Yeah.
I guess I'll go.
Mhm.
My concerns about it were when it mentioned about how it benefits the community or whatnot. So for me, I have concerns about that part because, of course, I want to present an art exhibition. And I'll go into more detail. For me, I would like to present illustrations, but also in conjunction, I'm a jeweler, so I want my illustrations to be wearing the jewelry that I want to present with it. So I don't exactly know how I would word that to say it benefits the community, besides the fact that they're able to purchase them, and that it brings, like, you can wear it and it's just pretty. Like, I don't know how else to say that would, like, it would bring a change to their life or something, if that's what they're looking.
Right, right. Um, Barb, do you want to add anything here? Was there anything different
I
for
took that,
you?
okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, perfectly.
I took that to mean that, I'm not sure if I read that correctly, but I'm not sure if I'm on step 1 or 2 of that part of the overview that you had up on the screen. But potential impact, is that what we're on?
Mhm. Or
Because-
public benefit.
Oh, you're on public benefit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. It can be a little confusing. So just to clarify real quick, the potential impact is on your craft.
Right.
Yeah. And then the public benefit is the audience, like yes. Yeah.
And what I've seen in my case, that would be, and I think for any artist or maker, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it would mean just the act of you sharing your project, your special opportunity with the public in some shape or form, whether it's on social media, whether it's at a special art exhibition. That's how I understood it to be, as a public benefit. You're sharing the wealth of what you experience by having this special opportunity.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think, Brianna, what I would encourage you to think through is what it means to purchase a craft from a local artist versus anywhere else, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And these are community grants, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I would actually encourage everyone really to kind of think through how your craft creates really a system of connection and an ecosystem that supports the arts and creativity throughout our county, right? And I wouldn't be so dismissive of your craft.
I didn't mean it to sound that way. I just
Yeah,
said it.
I know. I'm thinking, one of the things that I love to do anymore is, like, if I'm buying jewelry or anything like that, I go down to the Co. or I
Yeah.
find local
Mm-hmm.
local crafts, right? And so to actually think about why that matters, and how that's making an impact, and to be willing to think creatively about that, is fair game. It's really important to be able to articulate that for the grant application. It is a separate section in the grant application. It does get its own score, right? And so you want to do as well as you can on each section of the grant. I hope that helps a little bit.
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll be honest too, like the word that always gives me pause is the word it's the very first item on the list. Um Artistic merit.
Mm.
Maybe it's because I used to be a professor. I don't know, but I'm just like, oh my goodness, merit. You know, sounds like we're all applying for a scholarship or something.
Yeah.
You know, and it could be that, you know, if it's toward professionalization, but it's also about deepening your own creative process, right?
Mm.
And the grant is focused on deepening a creative process for you, and it's serving some sort of educational purpose, perhaps, if you want to think of it in those terms. I don't know that merit is really, for me, always the best word to be using there, if that makes,
Mm.
you know what I
Mm.
mean?
Yeah.
We're talking about artists at various stages of their career. It's eligible to everyone, you know, in that sense. And so I get a little queasy when I hear that word, but that's me, you know. And so I wanted to make sure we had a conversation just about how you all are responding about the language as well. I'm an English person. I'm a writer. That's my craft. So
Mm.
I pay very close attention to the language in the room, but thanks for the conversation with me. I appreciate that.
Of course.
Um, let's go into speaking of audience. One of the things that Dayton Metro Library offers is space for applicants and grantees to utilize. So if you're thinking through kind of where you would like to exhibit the work or where you would like to hold a performance, and you have a lot of questions or difficulty kind of finding those spaces on your own, Dayton Metro Library does offer spaces without charge to the grantees who receive the Artist Opportunity Grant. So if you're a performing artist, you would want to contact Mariah Johnson. If you're a visual artist, you would want to contact Tiffany Shaw Diaz. Their information is also in the guidelines. And I'm meeting with both of them actually later today on September 16th. And we'll be able to provide more detailed information about that if you're interested in contacting me, but you're also more than welcome to contact the two of them. You will find more detailed information about what they offer on the very last page of the guidelines. And I will pull up those guidelines at the end of this presentation just to kind of show you what I'm talking about there. So the application itself has multiple components. I've been referring to the sections of the application. So you will need to make an artist statement. You'll need to provide a work sample. Now, this work sample does not need to be from the project itself, but it should be a work sample that is representative of your craft to date. You want to describe your actual project that you are asking for financial support for. And that's just the what, when, where, with whom, and the why. So all the W questions that you can think of. And you can throw in how, but you'll have about 500 words, okay, to respond to that question. You'll need to provide a project timeline so that we know your exact start date and your exact end date. So just because you have from January 2025 to December of 2025 doesn't mean that you have to begin in January and you have to end in December. It may be that your project is going to take a couple months in the summer, right? And so your project timeline is what we'll actually use to determine when you're going to receive your funds and when your final report will be due. Those are unique dates for everyone based on the project timeline that you submit. There's a section in the application where you are asked to discuss the impact this opportunity will have on your work and on your development as an artist, where you will discuss the public benefit, as we were just discussing. And then probably the section that causes people most consternation, the project budget and the documentation of your expenses. We have a workshop just on the budget. We have a workshop just on the artist statement. We have workshops that cover the project description and impact. And then we also have a final workshop where it is a peer review, where people will be able to come in and work with each other in reading each other's grant applications and giving each other feedback and asking questions about them. So a lot of these sections, if you have, special concerns about any of them, what I would encourage you to do is choose the workshop that most relates to that topic so that you can receive the support and feel more confident moving forward. So what I'm going to do next in the rest of this presentation is kind of pull up samples of each of those sections so that you can kind of get a sense of what that looks like. And then I'll finish this presentation by just talking about the individual workshops I've just mentioned. So the artist statement, if you haven't written one before, really is about kind of your own aesthetic within your artwork, what makes it unique, what makes it you, your body of work as a whole, the history of your work, how it's developing and how this opportunity fits into that body of work, and then your vision for what's coming next in your work and how your craft will be developing through this opportunity and beyond it. Here's an example of an artist statement. I'm not going to read this to you, but I'll just pause here and give my voice a little rest. I'll let you all read it. And then we can certainly talk about it if you want, but just a minute or two here to kind of read through it. So I want to keep this up for us so that we can refer to it. But are you all kind of recognizing the components of the aesthetic, the body of work, and then the vision for the future in kind of almost a 3-paragraph format where they're talking about, again, their aesthetic, how they normally work, all right? And then they talk about that body of work as far as what they normally are working on, okay? Their media, and then their vision for how their work is changing and how they want to enter into a new opportunity for their craft. in the application, you'll have the opportunity to include work samples, images, video, or audio. Those will have to be less than 6 minutes in order to be uploaded, and a manuscript. Okay, you can submit writing as well. And one way that people like to do this is just to provide links. All right. If you do provide links, you want to make sure that those links are actually accessible, that the panelists are not going to have to create kind of a Google account to access it or something like that. You can also just upload a PDF with the links in it, which is another thing that a lot of people like to do. And that way you can have just the one sheet, and it'll have the links in it, it'll have the images in it, it may even have some text in it. It just depends on whether you're multimedia or what the best way is to represent your work. So you have that opportunity to upload examples of your work, and then after that, you'll have the opportunity to actually describe in text each sample so that the panelists, when they're looking at the work, they have a context for it. So I think it's really important, for example, if you're going to upload a YouTube video of, say, a sample performance that you wrote, you want to be able to kind of date that, provide some context and some significance for it so that the panelists can actually interpret what they're seeing. Brianna and Barb, does that make some sense to you both?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That's the fun part for me. I love looking at people's work. So it's like you're giving them a free exhibit, you all. So, okay. So the next section of the grant really is describing the project, right? What is the opportunity? You want to make sure that it's an important and unique opportunity. It can't be something, remember, that you've done before. There needs to be some sense of advancement or deepening of your work. When and where will it happen? Who is involved? Why is it significant in your field? But even more so, I think, why is it significant to your history and your experience as an artist? What is the takeaway for you? And what inspired you to explore this subject matter? That's 500 limit again. And then the impact on your career and your work. So what professional and artistic goals will you achieve by participating in the opportunity? Okay. So this is getting at the why should they fund you, basically. Okay. And I think it's kind of important to keep in mind that it is the Artist Opportunity Grant, and it's a pretty major criteria that the panelists are able to see how this opportunity is helping you grow as an artist in the direction that you want to be going. That's what they want to support. So the next section in the grant is the timeline, and you can see how kind of simple this is, really. You can do it just month by month. So this is a project that started, right out of the gate, January 2021, and was completed by the end of June with a reception on July 4th. All right, so this would be a person whose final report was due really by the end of July, all right, rather than in December. But you can see basically they're just giving you, the panelists, kind of the gist of the timeline that they're going to be working on. All right, pretty simple. Here's another example. Okay, where this is just being given kind of an opening date, a start date, and an end date, okay, or when the exhibition opens and then thinking through it as phases, right? I actually like this one a lot. It's a little more detailed, but also you can see how true to the creative process, right? Things take time and they need to happen a lot of times sequentially. You're reliant on other people. You're reliant sometimes on the weather, these kinds of things. And so there's playroom here in that we don't necessarily need you to be exact with your dates about when you're doing what, but just within kind of a month and a half or a month, what are you going to be completing? And they give you a fairly detailed list there. Okay. Any questions about the timeline? I feel like it's a pretty simple section of the grant, but just to check in real quick. We're good?
Yeah, I don't have any. I'm good.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we'll go back in here and talk about the budget. Okay. So I'm gonna
Oh, I had
this.
one question. I'm sorry.
Sure, I'm sorry.
I'm
Yes.
sorry.
No, you're good.
I was wondering, mine is a residency that I'm going to be taking part in July, and I was wondering, I am planning an art exhibition, but it may not be till 2026, but I could try to fit it into 2025. Is that necessary? Because my actual project is the actual retreat.
Right.
I will be sharing some of that
Yeah.
process through social media a little bit, but the main thing will be having an art exhibition.
Mm-hmm.
And do I have to stay within 2025 for that, or can it go into the future?
No, what you'll notice, Barb, on the application is that pretty close to the start of the application, there's a question. And the question is, are you going to be working on a new project, a new work, or is this a professionalization opportunity? So you want to make sure to say this is a professionalization opportunity, okay? And the funds are going toward this retreat, okay? Rather than the project itself. That's what you will want to focus on. And the timeline that you provide really would be for that opportunity.
Okay, great.
With you, Brianna, you're saying I've got this project, and yes, you got to make sure, you know, that every stage of that project, you know, falls within the year of 2025. Does that make sense to the two of you?
Yes, thank you.
They function differently? Great, great. Okay, I want to talk about the budget. I'm going to blow this one up. I feel like, well, that's not what I wanted. Okay, there we go. I feel like this is a form that gives people fits. So I want to take some time and with this, and if you all have questions, please just interrupt me here and I will deal with them in the moment. This is the form that is uploaded inside Community Force. It's inside the portal. You will actually download, you know, the project budget form from the portal to fill it out and then upload it once you've completed it, okay? You'll add your name here, obviously. So the first thing I want you to notice is just that the Artist Opportunity Grant funds are one column. So let's say you're requesting the maximum amount, you're requesting $5,000. The total down here should say $5,000. And then what you're doing on each line item here is specifying how much of that $5,000 you are spending on artist time. Remember, that is 20%. Dang it, dang it, dang it. Backwards. This is Rachel at her most amateur, you all. Hang on. Okay. There we are. Okay, we're back in. So I have a tendency to click on things. There we go. Oh my gosh, what's going on? Okay, we'll just leave it. So in the artist opportunity grant funds, let's say you're asking for the $5,000. You just want to make sure that the line items total to that $5,000. Same as if the artist opportunity grant funds that you are requesting total $3,000. You want to make sure that you're specifying those line items for the three. Okay. If it's zero, you just leave it as zero. If there's something else that you're spending, you know, you're able to kind of edit the line items if you want to get more specific, and you can certainly do that. Okay. Second column is your own funds. All right. If you are, in addition to the grant money, putting in some of your own funds, okay, that's where you record it, is in that column. Okay. If you're receiving support from elsewhere, maybe there's a second grant, you record those dollar amounts here. And then you have the expense totals. All right. So one way to think through this is to actually start with the outside column and just, this is what I'm projecting I'm going to spend on this project total. Okay. And then you need to make sure that these totals here add up to that amount. You can ask for up to the $5,000, right? But if that $5,000 doesn't cover all of the expense, then you actually do need to fill out at least one of these other columns to cover those additional expenses. All right. Does this make sense, you all?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So, of course you're guesstimating, I suppose, but
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, I'm a bit confused. Like for me, if I'm doing an exhibition, of course I have a general idea of how much materials would cost, but I feel like the expensive parts would be framing, and I don't know how to guesstimate how much that stuff would cost because they'd be different sizes and different kinds of frames. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, what I would actually encourage you to do is talk, if you're not framing them yourself, are you framing them yourself or with having someone else do that?
Someone else.
Okay. I would actually have a conversation with maybe 2 or 3 of the people you're considering as your framers, and talk to them about your project and ask for an estimate.
Okay.
All right. That's what I would suggest. And that can also kind of help you make some decisions as you plan the scope and the size of the pieces you're imagining completing. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. You know, if they quote you, it'll cost $2,000 to frame the project as you're describing it. And you're thinking, and you want the full amount, the $5,000, and you want that to cover everything, then you sort of know, well, okay, so I would have an additional 2,500 to play around with for materials and supplies. For my time, I can only have 20%. You see what I'm saying? And when you're completing the final report after you've completed the project, that's when you'll have the opportunity to submit the actual budget, all right,
Okay.
the actual spending. And that's when we'll ask you for receipts,
Mm.
invoices, that kind of stuff. So you want to save all of that, all right, just so that you have evidence for what you actually use the grant funds for, all right?
Okay.
We know going into this, by the way, that art supplies in particular cost differently different days of the week sometimes, right? And so that's why the receipts are important. And with the actual application, we do ask you to submit an indication of what costs will be on supplies and that kind of thing. So you can, for example, let's say you're ordering your supplies from Amazon. All right. You can go into Amazon, do some searches, find the costs, right? And just submit screenshots of that with the application. And we understand that that's not going to be exactly what you spend, right? But it gives you a more reliable projection than if you're just making the numbers up, Brianna.
Okay.
Does that make some sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I like this budget form. And this is something that my predecessor created. I think sometimes though what confuses people is they'll put everything in one column, and this is just the grant dollars. This is just your own dollars. This is just any other forms of support you're getting. This is the total cost of your project. And so to me, it just makes sense to start here with the expense totals and then to work back to show where you're hoping that funding comes from to meet those expenses. That's how I tend to think of the budget. I'm going to go through just real quickly the upcoming workshops that I have. We're about out of time here, but I'm happy to stay on longer after this if you all want to ask me additional questions. All right. This obviously is today's workshop, so we don't need to talk about that. Next week, we'll have an artist statement workshop, and we will simply have a writing workshop. That's what it'll be, but I'll also happily take whatever questions people have as they're going through the application at large, just depending on how many people we have arriving for these things. Is how we'll do it. I really like the idea of our artists and our creatives meeting each other and working with each other and offering support to each other. And that is how I'm anticipating these workshops will move forward. 2 weeks from now, at the end of September, early October, we will have a workshop just on the project budget. This gives everyone about 2 to 3 weeks here to kind of pull those screenshots and stuff like that we were just talking about, Brianna, as far as like supplies and that kind of stuff. And then if you bring that into this workshop, we'll be able to actually work that into a budget sheet. And hopefully at the end of this workshop, you would have that budget sheet completed based on the information that you have at that time.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yep.
And then this is the peer review workshop. And this is when people will come in with as much of a draft finished as possible. You can tell I'm an English major. I have to fix that typo. You'll come in with an actual draft, and we're going to set it up where we'll have breakout sessions and people will be able to give each other feedback. If you want feedback from me, I'm happy to provide it as the administrator of the grant. But I may also try to have, if they're available, a couple grant writers who come and also provide feedback during these sessions. Now, this time and date may change just depending on how many people RSVP with me. This is the one workshop where you do need to RSVP to me via email so that I can make sure we have enough people to actually have a workshop. So that is that. If you need anything, of course, my information is right here. So I would like to just kind of open this up to your all's questions, if you have any. And I can also take you into the portal if you would like, and we can kind of take a look at it. Is there anything else you all kind of have questions about or things you want to go back over?
No, it's great.
Okay.
I don't have any questions at the moment.
Okay.
But I did want to mention I had read through the PDF that's on the website that has all the information in it, and because you mentioned that you are a writer and English a grammar stickler, there are several typos in it.
Oh, did you found
Yeah.
typos?
And some dates that didn't match up, so I just
Okay.
wanted to put that out there.
Brianna, when did you read it?
Yesterday.
Oh dear. Okay. All right. Are you talking about the guidelines?
Yes.
Okay. I'll go back through it. I may have just uploaded the wrong draft if the dates are wrong. Okay. Let me show you all just real quick how to get to the portal. All right. From our website. Okay, so that is not what I wanted. Okay, so again, we're just going to apply to funding here. And you want to scroll down a little bit and click right here. You log in. Yours will not look as crowded as mine. You want to make sure you're clicking on the 2024-2025 Montgomery County Artist Opportunity Grant. And it should just pop right back up for you. Okay. Mine is a little different from all of yours, but that's basically how it should look. Okay. If I just click on this and kind of show you a preview, you'll see this is what you should be looking at. Okay. So it's pretty straightforward. The one thing that I will just remind you of before we call it quits here is that Community Force does tend to time out on people, and then you lose stuff that you've put in the portal. So I would say write outside of the portal first and then copy and paste it into the portal, or make sure that you're saving, you know, as you write, if you're going to draft right inside the portal. Okay. And just know that's a risk. All right. I want to say thank you both for coming and for speaking up as you did. I really appreciate it. If you have any suggestions for how I'm moving through these sessions, please reach out and let me know. I just want to make sure that I'm available to you all and that you're getting the support you need to be able to submit the best grant possible for yourself. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for
You're welcome.
the time and the workshop. It was great. Thank you.
No, I'm really happy to have had you here, Barb. It's lovely to meet you both. Brianna, you too. Best of luck to both of you. Please keep in touch if you need anything. And Brianna, thanks for holding the English person accountable for her typos. All right. All right. All the best to you both. All right.
You too.
Peace out.